So for this Try It Tuesday, I've gotten out some of Tim Holtz's brand new color, the Kitsch Flamingo. I'm going to start with using the Oxide pad. And I already got some marks on my paper, but that's okay. I'm going to try pairing it up with this abandoned coral. I know it's an unlikely combination, but you know, sometimes when you experiment, you just find good things. So I'm going to start with using the ink pad, and my end goal is to have this great big flower from Paper Artsy, from this Jaffe 73 it's called, if you're looking for it on our website. It's got a great saying on here. It's one I'm using for actually an art journal that I'm working on, because nice big large flower. But I thought I would play with that with these new colors as well. So I'm just going to take the ink, and I want to swirl a big circle, and then I'm going to stamp on top of it. So this is just a different way to add color to your stamps. So lots of times I would use markers or pencils to color in a stamp. But if you're not into coloring, here's an easy way to put color on your stamped images, especially these really nice large ones. And I'm not even, I'm not too concerned with how blended this is. If I've got some little circles in there or lines in there, I'm okay with that. And I think that's about big enough, maybe even too big already. Oh, I didn't need to do that. I have another one ready for my other color. So here we're going to go with the abandoned coral. And I'm just going to go on the outside, because if it doesn't look really good, I can abandon the abandoned coral. And see how, like, I'm just being super sloppy. So when I put it down and start, see that great big circle I get? So normally you wouldn't do that. But for the purposes of what I'm doing with this, that's going to disappear. It's not going to matter. But maybe I should show you quickly, if it did matter and you didn't want those circles, then instead of plunking it down on your image and then starting, you would actually work off the glass mat. So you put it down on the glass mat, tip it up a little bit so it's on a little bit of a slant, and start working off the edge here. And that would give you a nice, even, you don't get those big circles in there then. But for this is, I guess you could, not really a mixed media, because we're only using one medium. But for the purposes of the style I'm doing this in, circles, lines, doesn't matter. So now I'm just going to go back to my Kitsch Flamingo, and I'm just going to ease the color between these two a little bit. And you can see, man, this is not how you would normally blend, but again, for the purpose of what I'm doing here, this totally works. So I'm just kind of softening that hard edge that's where the two colors meet. And here where I've got some white between them, I'm just getting rid of that white. There, and I know right now that looks like nothing. But I'm going to put this in the stamp platform and make it look like something. So I do want it to come about the center of my flower. Oh, geez, what do you know? That looks like it's going to line up about perfect. And then I'm just taking some black ink. Ink up my stamp here. I happen to be using the Tim Holtz stamp positioner, but I know those are no longer sold in North America. So any kind of a tool that lined up your stamp is going to work. So this way I am stamping on top of my ink, where if I stamped the image first and then did all that inking, I would dull the stamp lines. This way my stamp's going to be nice and sharp. And that came out really nice, actually. But I am going to stamp it a second time just because I can, and it'll make it just a little more darker, I would imagine. I do like to just let it sit there for a minute and allow that ink that's on the stamp to permeate onto the paper, to just transfer on there nice. There, that gave us a really good image. So it still isn't looking like very much, but once I cut this out, then you'll see what a difference that is going to make. I also want to, because the center of my flower doing it this method is the same color as the petals, and I want it to be different. Now you could, it just so happens that this foam, oh, it almost fits perfectly in there. So I could take another color and just twirl it in there, but I'm going to do this with some book paper in there instead. So I just want to stamp the center of this flower. So I'll just ink up the center there. And I kind of just want to go on the edge of my book paper. And there we go. We've got that circle in there. And then I can do a little bit of cutting. So I'm going to cut out this circle here. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And I like the center of this flower has this little bit of scribble on it too, which is kind of fun. And then I can save that to do something else with it. And then we put that down here. That's maybe a little bit too drastic of a contrast. I think we need to put some color on there. So how about, here's where we can add some of the glaze. So to just add a touch of color on there. So I need my dirty Versamark ink pad, but that's okay. Just need to get some Versamark on there, enough for this to stick. And do I have some tweezers, baby? Okay, I'll set that aside. That's just powdery right now. And then I'm going to heat that. So that's the embossing glaze. So that's the embossing glaze that I put on there, which is different than powder in that you can see right through it. So here you can still read that text right through the embossing glaze, but it does put a pinkish hue on there, and I think that works better. So I'll set that aside, and now I can cut out my image. Okay, so we got that flower cut out, got our center done up, and now I just want to make a background to put on there, and I'm going to keep it, I'm just going to play with these same products that I've already had out. I thought I might use spray, but now I'm thinking, no, I'll just keep with these couple that we got going here. And use that some of that same color, I think, on the background. Actually, if I'm going to do a background, okay, change my mind again. I'll do the spray, because if I'm going to do a background, spraying it just makes it go really quick. So I'll do a little bit of it anyways, It also makes a mess, doesn't it? Because I should have put it in a box or something. Okay, so we'll do that. I'm going to put a little bit of Oxide spray, this spun sugar on there too, which is a little bit lighter. Sure, let's do that. Okay, and then I'll wipe up my mess. I really should have done that inside a cardboard box, but I didn't. I'm a messy crafter, and I'm okay with that. I enjoy the process. And I know when I get this wet now, I'm going to have a mess. So I better just clean up between here. Okay, so I am going to heat set this so I can put some more layers on top of there. I want to introduce a little bit of this abandoned coral. So I'm just going to put a little down there. And of course it's going to change the color when I add water because it is oxide. And I'm just using basil cardstock. I know some people say you should use watercolor paper or heavy stock or mixed media paper. But when I'm playing around just experimenting, I'll often just use, well, whatever I grab out of the cupboard. So I'm just introducing a little bit of this abandoned coral on there. Maybe a little bit more. And I'm just kind of peeking as I go to see how much color. Now I just kind of want to fill in these spots that are white. So I've got a lot of white on the edges there. And actually, instead of me like you can't really see what I'm doing when I've got it upside down, and neither can I. I keep trying to peek under my paper and I can't really see. So here's what I'm going to do so that we can add color from the top. Got a small jelly plate here I was playing with, and actually it's got some of those colors on there. So I'm not going to use it like you would typically use a jelly plate. I just want to use that to transfer a little bit of ink, but when I go this way, now I can see where I'm adding it. Oh, that's working for me. Okay, and let's dry that off. Just so that we can build up a little bit of layer there. And of course, if you did this with mixed media paper, you would likely get a better result than what I'm getting here. But this is just for playing around and trying out colors together. But tonight I thought I would try this. It's a little bit odd, but you know what? I'm liking the results of it together. So I'm really just using my jelly plate to transfer some ink over. Maybe a little bit of white space is okay. Or should we put, yeah, what the heck, let's put some more pink on there. Just fill in those white spots. I might even have enough ink on here to just get it wet. No, I need a little bit more pink on there. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Might as well get rid of the rest of the ink I've got on my paper. So that's not bad. It kind of is going to disappear on there though, right? So do we need something else? No, it's okay. We'll go for a tone on tone. That will totally work. And then I think a little bit of, okay, if I'm going to put black around the edges, I should probably figure out the right size first, right? So this direction, we're at 5 inches, we'll go 5 inches this way too. And I'm not going to throw this away. This is a pretty piece and it matches, so it can always go in the inside of the card to decorate. And if I don't use it on the inside, then I'll chuck it because I'm not going to hang on to it. A little bit of black, perhaps, around the edge. Oh yeah, I like that. In fact, I might even like a little bit of black through a stencil or something. Because I kind of think the background needs a little something to make it stand out from the flower. Yeah, let's do a little... Okay, wow, I'm getting quite a mess out here. So I have this stencil. I thought I would just add just a little bit. I just want a touch of black on there. I could actually splatter black on there too. But we'll start with a stencil. So I'm just going to put out a little bit of black paint. This happens to be the acrylic paint by Dita Wakley. And maybe I'll just do this down a little side here. So I'm going to put that on with a stencil brush, or a stipple brush. And I'll just do roughly a strip down the side. Doesn't need to be exact or anything. I just want some touch of black. And if the circles aren't perfect, that's okay too. When you do anything with kind of mixing your different mediums, it's nice if you can have that attitude where, anything that happens is okay. See, it's very irregular, and this kind of fades off. It may not even be straight, but it's okay. It's just adding a little bit of black on there. And I think that helps. Yeah, I like that. No, we're not going to add any on the flower itself. We'll just keep it on the back. And then do I have a card base? Ooh, this one, oh yeah, that fits perfectly. That helps. And then our little center up here gives it a little bit of a different look. But what if, I'm kind of thinking, okay, I'm going to do a quick heat on this paint here before I get it smudged everywhere, since I'm handling it. Thinking, oh, it'd be kind of fun to do a little bit of this just to see what would happen if we add that to the background. Okay, let me check out what kind of a stencil would work for that. Okay, so I decided on this stencil I just wanted something with some large openings on it. So this has got numbers and some words on there. So I'm just going to add some of that, a little bit overlapping my black paint. And not going all the way to the edge because I still want kind of a mixed media look to it. But I do want some of that to show behind the flower. Sure, that'll show. Okay, let's do that. I'll maybe go right to the edge. And now this, I'm going to use some of my pixie spray. So I'm going to use some of that on the back of the stencil because you can see it's not going to stay down 100%, and I'll have a little issue behind there. But we'll take care of that with some pixie spray. So you just spray that over your garbage can or a cardboard box. And I kind of want to line it up so that this number is right at the top of the card or near the top. There, that works. Now I'm going to put, like I did on this little center for the flower where I used a Versamark ink pad. You could use your ink pad, but it's just easier to get the dauber. This is full of Emboss It. It's as clear. It's easier to get that through your stencil. So Just gonna put that through here. Some of this is going to be underneath my flower, so I wouldn't really need to do the whole thing. And I'm not going to be too worried if I miss a spot. It's just experimenting, so we'll see what's going to happen underneath here. Okay. And someplace I had this paper for my embossing. Okay, it's going to add something on there. So you can already see it with the powder causing a little bit of color, but it'll be, you know, somewhat clear, just a little bit of pink. Not Kitsch Flamingo. I should say it properly, right? Not pink. And let's heat that and just see what happens. So that's added a little bit of something. It's kind of brightened up that pink. I'll hold it in the right angle. Yeah, it's and shiny there too. So changed it up. Yeah, that gives us just a little bit more of something in the background. And I like that it's only part of it, not all the way across. Okay, so let's put this down on a card. So I'll put my background down there, and because my paper is curling just slightly, I'll put a little bit more adhesive on there than I normally would. This is a really strong one, so I generally don't use very much, but I want it to help flatten out my paper and hold good on there. Just kind of put the paper down flat. And I'm going to try to roughly center that. Not roughly. I'd like it to be perfect actually, but we'll see what happens. Pretty good. And then because this is cut out, I think I can pop it up, and that will help it stand, you know, separate it a little bit from the back. I had some pop dots out here somewhere. Oh, and I actually have some leaves because I've been playing with this stamp quite a bit actually, not necessarily with Oxide inks, but just playing with the stamp. So I actually have some leaves that I did in with colored pencil. Try adding that to it and see what happens. Something like that. And what happens if we add in some leaves? So this is part of the stamp set as well, of this Joffy 73. You get the big flower, you get this neat kind of a background, and then the leaves and some words as well. Wow, this green like super pops against the pink. That might be a little much. Ah, what the heck, let's do her. Put some on there, and then this I could even pop it up again just to help separate that from the background a little bit. Give it some dimension. And since I've got text on there, I want the text facing the right direction. And I think I'm going to cut some of the stem off there because I just don't need that so long. something like that. Cut another one down. Oh, this one I didn't do a real good job of cutting in there, so I'm going to snip it a little bit more, see if I can get some of that white cardstock off of there. And where are we going to tuck that? Something like that. Okay, so these aren't glued down yet though, so I'll add a little touch of glue under there, and wow, that green is pretty bright compared to these pinks, but that's okay. There, I think just under 2 leaves that'll do enough. What if I add a little bit more black? Then I've decided I should highlight that black by adding some white in there too. So I've got some jelly roll here going for white. I really like these with art journaling, but any kind of mixed media, these are working on it. Just to give some more contrast on this detail. And it's very relaxing too. It's kind of like doodling, right? So it's just, except somebody's already done the doodling for you on the stamp. You're just coloring it in. So here's a little trick on these jelly roll pens. If you're using them and you know it has ink in it, but it seems like it's going to stop coming out. Okay, there's a few reasons why it could be. One is it depends on what it is you're coloring onto. If you're coloring on top of acrylic paints, then you really need for that paint to not only dry, but also cure. If you try to put jelly roll on it when that acrylic paint is just dry to the touch, you're going to have problems with this. Just doesn't want to stick to it, plus it's actually picking up a little bit of acrylic paint and clogging up that tip, so you have to keep cleaning it off. So you're better off, if you're going to go on acrylic paint, you're better off to let it actually cure. So you're talking like 72 hours. This is going on top of distress paint, or distress, the Oxide ink pads, not paint. And it has been heat set as well. So it goes on there a little bit better. But here's what we tend to do, because it looks like an ink pen, and we're used to using ink pens. And if you use a regular, just a ballpoint ink pen, and you go to write with it, and you know how the ink isn't coming out, and what we have a tendency to do then is to go on a scratched piece of paper, press really hard, and scribble really fast, and the ink gets flowing again. But if you do that with these jelly rolls, you're just not going to have any success with it at all. The trick with these is don't press hard. You just want to press very lightly, and that roller ball on the tip starts to turn, and it lets out the pigment in there. So you want to go slow. So go light and go slow. And if you do end up with a situation where there's ink in your pen still, but it's just not flowing, then what I do is take the tip of the pen and I just touch it against my skin, and the warmth from your body just seems to get that ink flowing again. And then again, go very lightly. and go nice and slow. And if you feel like it's not getting solid enough white, you can always let it dry and then go over it a second time. But normally once is, I usually just go over it once. It just is a way to get white in on some really fine, tiny areas when you're doodling like that. And there's the finished card. I'm happy with how that turned out there. And I'm really liking the shade of pink. That Kitsch Flamingo, I really like it. It's not super bright, it's not a hot pink, but it's definitely pink.